You ever notice how the moment someone starts rising, the people around them suddenly get uncomfortable? That's because average isn't accidental, it's enforced. Society teaches you to call it balance or being realistic. But what it's really doing is guilt-tripping you into staying small so you remain predictable and controllable. Most people don't stay average because they lack talent. They stay average because they're terrified of the social cost of becoming more. Fear sits at the center of this trap. Fear of rejection, fear of being talked about, fear of being labeled arrogant, obsessive, or out of touch. From a young age, you were taught a quiet rule. Don't outgrow the people around you. Don't rise so fast that others feel left behind. Don't want too much. Don't become unfamiliar. And every time you obeyed that rule, you traded potential for approval. Look around you. You already know people who could be far more than they are. Intelligent people, capable people, disciplined people. Yet they live ordinary lives, repeating the same routines, telling the same stories, making the same excuses. It's not because they can't do more. It's because doing more would isolate them emotionally. And isolation is the pain most people will do anything to avoid. Before we go further, mark this moment, subscribe. Not for me, but because what comes next is not comfortable, and comfort is the very thing that keeps people average. Here's the first truth Machiavelli understood long before modern psychology put words to it. Men are driven by two principal impulses, love and fear. Average people choose love. They choose belonging. They choose safety. Powerful people learn to manage fear. They accept the loneliness that comes with independence. Average is not a lack of ability. It's a strategy to stay loved. Think about your own life. How many times did you soften your ambition so others wouldn't feel threatened? How many times did you delay growth because now isn't the right time? How many times did you downplay your discipline so you wouldn't look intense? Those weren't rational decisions. Those were emotional negotiations. You were paying a social tax to remain accepted. And the cost of that tax compounds quietly. Over time, you stop believing you're capable of more. You start confusing comfort with contentment. You start calling fear balance. And once that happens, mediocrity no longer needs to be enforced from the outside. You enforce it yourself. This is how control becomes internal. Society doesn't need to pressure you anymore once you've learned to pressure yourself. You hesitate before trying. You edit your dreams before anyone else can criticize them. You slow your own momentum so you don't make others uncomfortable. Average becomes a habit, not a circumstance. And habits are harder to break than rules, because they feel like choices. The most dangerous part is how reasonable it all sounds. I'm just being practical. I don't want to change too much. I'm happy where I am. These sentences are emotional shields. They protect you from the discomfort of growth. Growth demands friction. It demands isolation. It demands that you survive seasons where no one claps for you. Average avoids that price by lowering the ceiling instead. Look at how groups behave. The moment one person starts training harder, working deeper, thinking differently, the group responds. Not with encouragement, but with jokes, with concern, with subtle disapproval. Don't burn out. You're doing too much. Relax. These aren't neutral statements. They are social corrections, signals designed to pull you back into alignment. Because when one person rises, everyone else is forced to confront their own stagnation. Most people retreat right there, not because they're incapable, but because belonging feels safer than potential. This is the first real trap Machiavelli would recognize. People fear losing love more than they fear losing power. So they choose the path that preserves connection, even if it erodes self-respect. And self-respect, once damaged, is difficult to rebuild. You've felt this erosion, that quiet dissatisfaction. the sense that you're capable of more, but somehow stuck. That feeling isn't laziness, it's suppressed ambition. Ambition that learned it would be punished socially if it showed itself too clearly. So it hid. It waited. It settled for average because average kept the peace. But peace has a cost. Peace with others often means war with yourself. The longer that war goes on, the quieter your inner voice becomes. You stop trusting your instincts. You defer decisions. You ask for permission. You look outward instead of inward. This is how powerful potential turns into polite mediocrity. Machiavelli understood this dynamic without modern language. He saw that those who seek to please everyone end up powerless. Love feels good, but it makes you dependent. Fear feels dangerous, but it makes you decisive. The average life is built on dependency, on approval, reassurance, and validation. Power is built on autonomy. Autonomy requires emotional strength, the ability to disappoint, the ability to be misunderstood, the ability to walk alone without narrating your reasons. Most people never train this muscle. They outsource it to the group. And once you outsource courage, you inherit the group's limits. This is the moment where awareness begins to sharpen. When you realize average isn't neutral, it's a compromise between who you could be and who others are comfortable with you becoming. And once you see that clearly, you can't unsee it. Once you see it, every pattern becomes obvious. You notice how ambition is praised in speeches but punished in practice, how discipline is admired from a distance but resented up close, how everyone celebrates success stories, as long as they're safely removed in time or geography. But the moment success happens nearby, it's treated like a disruption. This contradiction is not accidental. It's the mechanism that keeps most people average while allowing a few to rise. Average survives because it feels morally superior. It convinces you that wanting more is selfish, that standing out is arrogance, that intensity is imbalance. These labels work because they attack your identity, not your logic. You don't want to be seen as a bad person. So you soften, you slow down, you dilute yourself. And in doing so, you trade direction for approval. Think about how often you've heard the phrase, "know your place." Sometimes it's spoken, often it's implied. It shows up in expectations, traditions, and invisible ceilings. When you respect those ceilings, you're rewarded with acceptance. When you challenge them, you're met with resistance. Not always loud, often subtle, a raised eyebrow, a change in tone. Less support. These are social penalties. And they work because humans are wired to avoid exclusion. This is why most people never test their limits. They mistake the edge of social comfort for the edge of their ability. They stop where approval ends, not where potential ends. And over time, that stopping point becomes permanent. It becomes who they are. Average is not who they were born to be. It's where they learn to stop. Machiavelli wrote that the crowd judges by appearances. What he meant is that people reward what looks familiar and punish what feels threatening. Excellence feels threatening because it reveals contrast. Contrast creates discomfort, and discomfort is the one thing average culture cannot tolerate. So it applies pressure until the contrast disappears. But here's the turning point you were never taught to recognize. Resistance is not a warning sign. It's a signal of direction. The friction you feel when you push beyond average is not danger, it's confirmation. It tells you you've reached the boundary of conformity. Most people turn back here, not because they should, but because they don't know what the friction means. This is where awareness deepens into choice. You can retreat into comfort and be praised, or you can move forward into resistance and be questioned. One path preserves peace, the other builds power. Peace is temporary, power compounds. Look at your habits. Average is built quietly, in small decisions no one sees. Choosing ease over effort, distraction over depth, entertainment over education. None of these ruin a life alone. Together, they create a ceiling you'll never break. Excellence feels boring at first because it offers no immediate applause. Average feels rewarding because it gives you instant validation. The question isn't whether you're capable of more. It's whether you're willing to be uncomfortable long enough to prove it to yourself. Discomfort is the toll booth. Everyone reaches it. Few are willing to pay. That's why average feels crowded and excellence feels lonely. Loneliness isn't a flaw of the path. It's the price of independence. The moment you accept that, you stop interpreting isolation as failure and start recognizing it as transition. This is where most people sabotage themselves. They confuse silence with rejection. When praise disappears, they assume they're doing something wrong. But praise is a social reward for conformity. Growth removes that reward because growth removes familiarity. You're no longer easy to categorize. And when people can't categorize you, they become uneasy. Think about the last time you changed your routine, your mindset, or your standards. Notice how reactions shifted. Some people withdrew, some mocked, some suddenly became concerned. That concern wasn't about your well-being, it was about their comfort. Your evolution forced them to look at their own stagnation, and stagnation hates mirrors. Machiavelli understood that those who introduce change create enemies by default. Not because they are malicious, but because they disrupt order. Average is an order. It's a social agreement to not rise too far above one another. When you violate that agreement, the group responds. Quietly at first, then more directly. This is why discipline feels rebellious. Waking early, training consistently, saying no to distractions. These actions are not loud, but they are defiant. They signal that you are no longer governed by impulse or group approval. And that signal unsettles people who rely on impulse and approval to justify their own inaction. At this stage, guilt becomes louder. You'll feel it when you skip events to work, when you invest in yourself instead of pleasing others, when you choose long-term outcomes over short-term harmony. Guilt is the final emotional weapon average uses to pull you back. It tells you you're selfish. It tells you you've changed. It tells you you're abandoning people. But guilt is only effective if you believe you owe others your stagnation. You don't. You owe yourself your potential. The people who truly care will adapt. The ones who don't were invested in who you were, not who you could become. This realization hurts, but it also frees you. Because once you accept that not everyone comes with you, you stop dragging weight that slows your ascent. You move cleaner, faster, with less internal conflict. Here's the quiet truth. Average people don't hate excellence. They fear what it reveals. It reveals wasted time, missed discipline, untaken risks. Your growth shines a light they didn't ask for, and rather than change, they try to dim the light. This is where empowerment begins to form, not as confidence, but as resolve. A steady decision to continue despite misunderstanding. You stop explaining yourself. You stop justifying your choices. You let results accumulate quietly. Silence becomes your ally. Consistency becomes your proof. And day by day, the resistance loses strength. Not because people suddenly approve, but because your momentum becomes undeniable. Momentum changes the rules. Once you have it, you don't need permission. You create gravity. People stop questioning you out loud and start watching you quietly. They may not admit it, but consistency forces respect in a way arguments never could. This is why empowerment never announces itself. It arrives through repetition. Here's where the internal shift becomes permanent. You stop measuring progress by how others respond and start measuring it by how little their opinions affect your behavior. Approval becomes optional. Disapproval becomes background noise. You realize something powerful. The crowd was never your audience. Your future was. Average thinking collapses at this point because it depends on constant emotional feedback. It needs reassurance, it needs validation, it needs consensus. But discipline doesn't negotiate. Discipline executes, and execution compounds faster than motivation ever will. Think about how many people wait to feel ready. Readiness is a myth sold to keep you waiting. No one feels ready to outgrow their environment. No one feels comfortable breaking old identities. Average people wait for comfort. Powerful people move through discomfort with intention. That difference alone determines outcomes. Machiavelli warned that fortune favors those who adapt quickly. Adaptation requires action before certainty. The average waits for proof before moving. The disciplined move to create proof. That is not recklessness. It's courage informed by preparation. You don't leap blindly. You build capacity quietly and step forward deliberately. Notice how your self-talk evolves. You stop asking, "What will they think?" and start asking, "What does this cost me if I don't do it?" That question changes everything. It reframes inaction as a choice with consequences. Regret becomes more frightening than criticism, and once regret outweighs fear, average loses its grip. This is also where time becomes visible. You feel it passing differently. You become less tolerant of distractions that don't serve a direction. You cut down inputs that numb instead of sharpen. Entertainment loses its grip. Convenience loses its appeal, not because you're joyless, but because your joy is now tied to progress. Empowerment doesn't make life easier. It makes it clearer. Clear priorities. Clear standards, clear boundaries, and clarity scares people who rely on ambiguity to stay comfortable. They may accuse you of being rigid. What they really mean is you're no longer negotiable. At this stage, solitude stops feeling heavy and starts feeling clean. You're not lonely. You're focused. You don't crave noise. You value signal. You don't need constant connection. You need alignment. This is when your inner authority solidifies. Average is no longer tempting. You see it for what it is, a safe place to hide from potential. And once potential becomes more compelling than comfort, there's no going back. You've crossed the psychological point of no return. You've crossed that point quietly, and that's what makes it real. There's no ceremony when average releases its hold. There's just a moment where you stop negotiating with yourself, where excuses lose their persuasive power, where comfort no longer feels like relief, but like delay. That moment is subtle and irreversible. From here on, your biggest enemy isn't fear. It's familiarity, familiar routines, familiar conversations, familiar limits disguised as wisdom. Familiarity whispers, "You've come far enough." It tempts you to settle right before compounding begins. Most people quit at this stage, not because they're weak, but because progress becomes boring. The dramatic struggle fades, and all that remains is repetition. And repetition is where average sneaks back in. This is where emotional control deepens. You stop chasing intensity and start respecting consistency. You don't need the rush of starting something new. You need the discipline of continuing when novelty dies. This is the phase that separates those who flirt with excellence from those who embody it. It's unglamorous, it's quiet, it works. Pay attention to how your environment responds now. Fewer comments, less resistance, more distance. This isn't approval, it's recalibration. People adjust their expectations when they realize you're not coming back. They may not cheer, but they stop pulling. Silence replaces pressure. That silence is a sign of progress. Machiavelli would recognize this as consolidation, the stage after conquest where power is stabilized. Conquest is loud, consolidation is invisible. Average people only understand the noise. They mistake silence for stagnation. You understand it as focus. Your standards begin to enforce themselves. You don't need to announce them. Your behavior does the work. You arrive prepared. You leave when it's unproductive. You choose depth over breadth. These choices accumulate into reputation. Reputation compounds faster than talent because it precedes you. People assume competence before you speak. There's a temptation here to soften again, to be nice, to explain, to reconnect on old terms. Resist it, not with hostility, but with consistency. Consistency is the most respectful boundary. It doesn't argue, it persists. Over time, it teaches people how to treat you. Notice also how your internal dialogue simplifies. Fewer debates, fewer justifications. You act, review, adjust. This loop replaces rumination. Rumination keeps people average because it feels productive while producing nothing. Action, even imperfect, creates feedback. Feedback creates improvement. Improvement creates distance. This is the rhythm now. Act, learn, repeat. No drama, no announcement, just accumulation. You're no longer proving anything to anyone. You're building something for yourself. And that shift from proving to building is the final structural break from average. From here, empowerment isn't a feeling, it's a pattern, one you execute daily, quietly, relentlessly. And patterns don't care about opinions. They don't respond to praise or criticism. They simply run. Once your life is built on patterns instead of moods, average has no entry point. Moods fluctuate, patterns compound. This is why most people relapse into mediocrity. They rely on motivation. Motivation is emotional. Patterns are structural. You begin to notice how rare structural thinking really is. People talk about goals but avoid systems. They chase inspiration but resist routines. They want results without identity change. Average lives in that gap. It survives on intention without execution. You've stepped out of that gap by anchoring your days to behavior, not feeling. This is also where your tolerance for excuses collapses, not just in others, but in yourself. You no longer romanticize struggle or explain away inconsistency. You see it clearly for what it is, avoidance wearing a clever mask. That clarity is not harsh, it's clean. Clean thinking creates clean action. Machiavelli understood that power is maintained by those who remove randomness from outcomes. Randomness feels exciting, but it keeps you dependent on luck. Structure reduces luck's influence. When your effort is applied the same way, at the same time, toward the same aim, results stop being surprising. Predictability becomes strength. This is why average people call disciplined lives boring. Boredom is what it feels like when chaos is no longer in control. To someone addicted to stimulation, order feels empty. To someone building power, order feels safe. Safety here doesn't mean comfort, it means reliability. Reliability is rare. Rare things are valued. Watch how your confidence changes. It's no longer loud or performative. It's situational. You don't need to convince. You demonstrate. You don't seek permission. You proceed. You don't announce goals. You execute privately. This quiet confidence unsettles people more than bravado ever could. You may notice a new kind of resistance now. Distance. Invitations slow. Conversations shorten. Some relationships fade without conflict. This is natural. Average thrives on proximity and reassurance. Distance removes its leverage. Let it happen. Not every door closes because you did something wrong. Some close because you no longer fit the room. This phase tests patience. Results may lag behind effort. Recognition may be absent. This is where most people look back. You look forward. You understand compounding. You know that consistency always wins later, even if it feels invisible now. You're not building for applause. You're building for inevitability. Inevitability is the opposite of average. Average is uncertain, reactive, dependent. Inevitability is steady, directional, self-reinforcing. When your actions make outcomes inevitable, you stop negotiating with fear. Fear loses leverage when the path is already laid. This is where empowerment fully locks in, not as excitement, but as calm certainty. You know what you do each day. You know why you do it. And you know that if you keep going, average has no way back in. You know this certainty isn't loud. It doesn't rush to announce itself. It settles into your posture, your tone, your choices. You move with less urgency because you're no longer reacting. You're executing. Execution replaces anxiety. When you know exactly what you'll do tomorrow, fear has nothing to attach to. At this stage, you start seeing average everywhere. Not as an insult, but as a pattern. You recognize the endless planning with no action, the talk about dreams with no structure, the cycles of motivation followed by collapse. You don't judge it anymore. You understand it, and understanding gives you distance. Distance gives you clarity. Machiavelli wrote that people rarely change unless forced by necessity. Most never create that necessity for themselves. They wait for crisis to demand growth. You chose discipline before crisis. That's the difference. You didn't wait for pain to push you. You let purpose pull you. That decision saves years. Your emotional world simplifies further. You stop oscillating between confidence and doubt. Doubt still appears, but it no longer dictates behavior. You treat it like weather, notice it, plan around it, continue anyway. This is emotional dominance, not suppression. Command. Average people think discipline removes freedom. You now see the opposite. Discipline removes noise. Noise steals freedom. When noise is gone, choice expands. You can say yes without panic and no without guilt. You're no longer controlled by impulse or approval. You act from alignment. This is also where your presence changes how others respond to you. You don't need to assert authority. It's assumed. People sense when someone isn't easily moved. They adjust their tone. They measure their words. This isn't intimidation, it's respect born from consistency. You might notice opportunities emerging quietly. Not offers blasted in public, but invitations behind the scenes. People seek you out because you're reliable. Reliability attracts trust. Trust opens doors that talent alone never could. This is how power spreads, through networks built on dependability, not charisma. The temptation here is to rush the finish line. Don't. Rushing reintroduces emotion. Emotion reintroduces error. Stay with the process. Let time do the heavy lifting. Compounding is invisible until it isn't. And when it shows up, it looks sudden to everyone else. But you know it was built daily. This is the final insulation against average. Patience anchored in structure. Patience without structure is waiting. Patience with structure is strategy. You have the latter now. You're no longer hoping to escape mediocrity. You've outgrown it. From here on, growth is less dramatic and more consequential. Small adjustments yield large returns. Subtle decisions shape outcomes. You're playing a longer game, and the longer game favors those who don't flinch. Average can't follow you here. It doesn't have the endurance. It doesn't have the tolerance for delayed reward. You do, and that's the quiet advantage that compounds into something unmistakable. That unmistakable shift becomes visible even when you don't speak. People sense that you're no longer negotiating with life. You're directing it. Your decisions carry